Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swagglehos. And in this video, we got to look back on my Christmas wish list for 2022, meaning I made my Christmas wish list in 2021, and see how I did with my picks this year. Did my speculation pay off? Did I get left holding the bag on a lot of the books I picked up? Was I able to find all of the books I was going for? So in this video, we're going to go through the books, take a look back at the calendar year, talk about which books I picked up and why, and maybe add some speculation and some foresight into what those books might be doing in the future. But before I get into the video, if you guys could drop me a like or comment or subscribe if you're enjoying the content, helps support the channel, doing those things, I appreciate it. But let us get into this video here today. Now, of course, I'm going to go through my previous Xmas wish list from 2021 going into 2022. A few days back, I released my video of my wish list going into next year. And of course, you know, it was a good year for Swagglehos here. I was able to pick up a lot of books. Now, these are just the books that we're talking about in terms of what I was able to get on my wish list, but not necessarily all the books that I picked up this year. In fact, I might actually do a video when we get to the very end of the year, say, I don't know, New Year's Eve or something like that, where we can do a full recap on all of the books that I got, maybe some of the highlights, maybe we'll call it like a top 10 of the year or something like that. But let us address the wish list here today. But the first one we got to talk about is Daredevil number 8 from 1965. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, this is the first appearance of the greatest villain, second only to Paste Pot Pete, to ever grace Marvel comic books. And this, of course, is the first appearance of the villain character known as Stiltman. And I gotta say, memes aside, this really is a great Daredevil cover. It really is a great Wally Wood cover. I love the Force perspective. It's really, really striking. Anytime you see this one in person, at least that's sort of my opinion, with like the way that the contrast works, the Force perspective, the newspaper, which I always really, really appreciate. And this is a book that I was able to find in the wild. I think it was at the top of the year. Now, I since actually moved on with my copy, so it is currently no longer in the collection, but it was a book I was able to pick up, which is why it has the green check mark over the top of the book. Of course, in the future, 2024, I believe it is, we're going to be getting the Daredevil Born Again series. And I do actually think that there is a small chance that we might see Stiltman in that Daredevil series. Now, it might not be a big, character portrayal. It might be kind of a small kind of joke meme thing, a little wink to comic book collecting fans. But I do actually think that we're going to see this character. All right, the next book that was on my Christmas wish list for 2022 was actually Tales of Suspense number 66 from 1965. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, this would be the first appearance of the Red Skull in the Silver Age, but specifically the Johann Schmidt version of the Red Skull. Now, Tales of Suspense 65 is the book that most of the market looks to as being the first appearance of the Red Skull in the Silver Age, but that was the George Maxson version of the character, much like when Red Skull made his original appearance way back in the day. You know, he had a body double. He had a fake out that he was trying to use as a diversion for Captain America. Of course, this is also the origin of the Red Skull, which makes this a key onto its own right if you're somebody who would rather have the number 65 version. But Red Skull obviously is a very significant villain in Marvel comic books, and one that I think we could see a return of in the future in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, I write future spec because, you know, looking at the landscape, thinking about, you know, what could be going on in the MCU, doesn't necessarily feel like we're going to be seeing this character in, say, a Thunderbolts movie or Captain America number 4, but it does feel like Red Skull is always going to be a significant character that will be on the table at some point in the future. And they actually had that actor from The Walking Dead kind of reinvigorate the character in Infinity War. So wouldn't it be interesting if we kind of, you know, revisit some of that Captain America time travel stuff? I mean, hell, maybe we're going to see, you know, Captain America do the returning of the Infinity Stones, and maybe that's going to be the Captain America that they pick up to utilize to battle Kang in Secret Wars, and maybe we'll have another scene with Red Skull. So you never really know with this book. Of course, the green checkmark means I was able to pick it up in my collection this past year. I was actually able to get this as a kicker for another book that I traded for that I will talk about later on in the video. So with that said, let's go on to the next book here. And the next book is actually Marvel Age number 97 from 1991. And what is the significance of this? Well, this is the first preview appearance of Darkhawk. Now, for me, I still am a believer in Darkhawk #1 as being the true first appearance of the character. I realize that he is on the cover with these Marvel Age magazines, but I would still rather have Darkhawk #1. But with that said, going into this current calendar year we're in, I knew that I needed to add this one to my collection just to have it in my back pocket, just in case I felt the FOMO. Luckily, the New Spec Outlaws, shout out to them. Go follow them on Instagram if you can come across their profile, New Spec Outlaws. I saw them at the Nearman Sunday show, and they had seen my video talking about this book, and they had a copy, and they were so generous and kind to give it to me. So I was able to check this one off the list. You know me, I can never have enough Darkhawk books, and hopefully I'm able to find the one I'm looking for next year. All right, the next book that was on my Xmas wish list for 2022 is the first and actually the only book I was unable to acquire this year. This book, of course, is Strange Tales #101 from 1962. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, this is the first issue that they would do superhero stories in the Strange Tales title, and specifically it would be when they started the Human Torch stories. Of course, it is also a beautiful and classic, iconic Jack Kirby and Dick Ayers cover. A very, very cool one that definitely gives me a lot of nostalgia. It feels like this is kind of a weird kind of tweener book when it comes to Marvel history. On the one hand, it is very, very significant in terms of kind of what it represents, and I think the cover is, one of the iconic covers in Marvel comic books. Yet on the other hand, it's not necessarily like a first appearance, or it doesn't have like a new character that they introduced, especially in this year of 1962. So it's kind of this weird kind of tweener book that is definitely one that doesn't necessarily have spec value, but is a great collector's book. Now, I was able to come across this one many times throughout the year, but generally speaking, it was being priced at a price that I felt like I didn't want to spend. I want to kind of get this one at a really generous entry point, but you never know. I'm sure I will see it again in these coming years, and if I do find a copy, I might add it to my collection. All right, the next book on my Christmas wish list of 2022 was actually Uncanny X-Men #107 from 1977. And what is the significance of this book? Well, there's actually quite a few things. Number one, it is the first appearance of the character known as Gladiator. That is actually the number one reason why I wanted this book, but it is also the first appearance of the Starjammers team, of course, the team consisting of Corsair. It is also the first appearance of the Shi'ar Imperial Guard, which of course is led by Gladiator. But overall, it is the book that connects the X-Men to the Marvel Cosmic Universe. And this, I feel like, is a very important linchpin book in the distant future. Obviously, we still got to get to X-Men. We still got to build out that kind of X universe. But eventually, when we get there, knowing that Marvel has all these cosmic stories that they want to do as well, it does really feel like, the Shi'ar and the Gladiator and the Starjammers will eventually be on the table. Luckily, a friend of the channel, Comic Ozzy, was able to send me this book for free. Shout out to him as well. I know what you guys are thinking, like, Jesus, Swaggle Amazon Christmas list, is just being fulfilled by all these wonderful people I've met in the hobby. But don't worry, we have lots of books that I got left holding the bag that we have yet to get to. All right, the next book that was on my Christmas wish list for 2022 is actually Avengers #48 from 1968. Can you believe it? The first appearance of the Black Knight. Of course, you guys know I am working on my Avengers run, and a year ago at the time, this was one of the books that I did not have in my collection, and I definitely needed to pick up a copy. Well, I was able to successfully acquire a copy even at the beginning of the year, and what I paid for it was a good deal. I think I got mine for around $200, which was already on the dip. I think that this book has been able to sustain at that level, at least the grade I have, which is probably like a VG copy. So I think that that is still a pretty fair price to pay, generally speaking, for what I got it for. And this is a very interesting book. Of course, I have right there on the slide the Whitman Paradox. If you guys have not seen my Whitman Paradox whiteboard video, I think it is a very fun one, albeit maybe a little bit difficult to follow as I kind of, ramble from time to time. But I do actually think it is very interesting to think about this book. What is the real potential future for a character like the Black Knight? On the one hand, he's kind of in that tier 2 second generation of Avengers characters. I mean, he's, from the Silver Age, been around for a very long time. But on the other hand, he's the Black Knight. I mean, does anyone actually care about the Black Knight? Will Dane Whitman actually break out into pop culture? Does Jon Snow have the chops to bring Dane Whitman to the promised land in terms of the values of this book? Who are going to be the collectors and the holders of this character? Will we be surprised? It's really, really hard to say. But based on where prices are now and how they've been, really, really pulling back and correcting, it does feel like the entry point into this book is actually in a pretty good spot. I do actually think if you're somebody out there who maybe wanted to make a long-term play on this, say you were going to pick it up today and hold it for about 4 to 5 years, I think you might actually do pretty well. All right, the next book we got to talk about is, of course, another Avengers book on my wish list, but this one is Avengers number 57 from 1968. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, you guys know this is the first appearance of the character known as Vision. The classic cover, Behold the Vision, a classic Silver Age book, and definitely one that I feel like is on a lot of people's list, which is why I have it right there on the slide. Highly desired, yet highly available. This is a very interesting book to me, one that tends to kind of yo-yo up and down in terms of its values, throughout the years. If you go back and you look at GPA and you see what the values of this book has done, it is an interesting book. I've, in fact, been thinking about making a video, another whiteboard video, talking specifically about this book and maybe calling it the ladder theory. Now, if you guys happen to know what the ladder theory is, it's basically, this idea of, slingshotting your way up the ladder. And I do feel like this is a book that a lot of people use as sort of, trade bait, or use as books that they can swing into other books, which is sort of what makes it kind of volatile, which in fact is actually one of the ways I was able to get this book for myself in my collection. Shout out to Brad Sloan of FVF Comics. I made a trade with him earlier in the year to acquire this book. If you guys remember, I traded him a Tales to Astonish number 63 in a 6.5 grade. That would be the first full appearance of the leader, a book that I was able to find at a really good deal. I think I paid, around $50 for my copy of that Tales to Astonish, and then plus the grading fees, maybe that bumps it up to around 75 or whatever the case is. So I was able to kind of have a cost basis into my Avengers 57, very, very low, which is, why it's kind of great to just sort of acquire books that you find at good deals from time to time, because you can eventually use them to trade into the books that you actually really want. So Avengers number 57, definitely a success story for me. And the last little thing I want to talk about with this book, the 1968 pace car factor. What I mean to say by that is when we're talking about, a book like Dane Whitman, The Black Knight, first appearance of that character, also being a 1968 book, we think about other 1968 books or 67 or so, Captain America 117, First Falcon, or Thor 165, first full appearance of him, aka Adam Warlock. I tend to think of, the values of those books should all be in comparison to Avengers 57, because Avengers 57 tends to be, the crown first appearance jewel of that era of book. And so I think about all those other books, what is the sort of ceiling factor for a book like Thor 165? How popular could Adam Warlock be? Well, I would definitely look to Avengers number 57 in terms of what has this book done in the past, and use that as a benchmark to kind of measure, the speculation and the value level that a Thor 165 could be in the future. So I really do like this book. I think it is a very important, key book to study and understand out there in the market as we are making intelligent purchases for our collection. All right, 3 more books here on my Christmas wish list for 2022, year in review here. And of course, the next book we got to talk about is another one that I was actually able to acquire via trade. But of course, the book we're talking about here is Silver Surfer number 1 from 1968, the big premiere issue. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, this is the first solo title series for the Silver Surfer. It is the origin of the Silver Surfer. It is the first appearance of Shalaba. It is the origin of the Watcher as well. And I would call this the second or third best book to own for the Silver Surfer character. Now, you guys may be able to remember the trade I was able to pull off earlier this year with Harry from Into the Void Comics. And I was actually able to move a Journey into Mystery annual number 1, first appearance of Hercules, as well as a Strange Tales number 111, second appearance of Doctor Strange, and first appearance of Baron Mordo, and swing that into the Silver Surfer 1. But this is one of those books, for whatever reason, I just never really wanted to pay for. So I was really happy to make that trade. And being that my cost basis into those other 2 books were ones that were really low overall, I think like in total was about like $180 or whatever the case was. So generally speaking, I was able to trade into my Silver Surfer number 1 for around $180, maybe some change, up to $200. And again, kind of like what I was saying with the Vision book, this is why it is always good to find those deals where you can, so that you can then swing them and make trades and have, value plays with other people who want, the books that you have, and you're able to get the books that you actually really want. All right, let's move on now to my second to last book that I had on my wish list for 2022, a fantastic Grail book, but also the book that admittedly I definitely got caught holding the bag on this one. This is the book that I lost out the most equity on this year. And what book am I talking about? Well, of course, I'm talking about Uncanny X-Men #4 from 1964. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, this is the first appearance of the Scarlet Witch, first appearance of Quicksilver, first appearance of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, which includes the first appearance of Toad, the great character known as Toad. This is also the second appearance of Magneto. Can you believe it? The second appearance of Magneto in a great early X-Men book. Now, of course, I got my copy earlier this year through Comic Link, and I paid $2,200 for my particular copy. Now, if you guys happen to know the prices off the top of your head, you would know that this is now a book fair market value that sells around that $1,500 price point. So I definitely overpaid by $700 or so, but it's not the end of the world. It's not too bad overall because my book has never been pressed or cleaned. I can definitely tell. So it's currently sitting in a CGC 3.5. I definitely think we can bump that up to a 4.5. So I am hopeful that I can kind of recoup the value I've lost out on with the prices all sort of correcting to where they are today. So at some point next year, I will be doing a CPR video for this. I think that that would be a really great video for us to put together for you guys. But this right here is an interesting book, still one that I think is actually, especially now, kind of underrated, almost undervalued, so to speak. I mean, you know, undervalued is a relative term, and we don't know where prices are going. Everything could be going to zero next year. So let's kind of retract my undervalued statement, but we could definitely call this book underrated. I mean, when you look at the slide right there, you get such value out of owning this book. You get multiple first appearances of great characters, and this is also the second appearance of Magneto. I mean, definitely a lot of great things going for you in this book. And if this was a book that I actually didn't have in my collection already, it would have been a book that I absolutely would be putting on my list for 2023. I think this is going to be a great year to acquire this book because I do think that the Scarlet Witch is maybe one of the most important characters still in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This is still an incredibly important book. Obviously, we're going to be getting X-Men stories in the future. Magneto is going to play a role in that. And I really do think that this is going to be a keeper book for the long term. All right, and the last book I had on my Christmas wish list for 2022 was a big boy. This one, of course, was Journey into Mystery number 85 from 1962. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, this is the first appearance of the character known as Loki, the third appearance of the character known as Thor, and one of the great Silver Age blue chip books in my opinion. Now this is a really interesting one to talk about, one that I definitely lost a little bit of equity on, but not by much. You know, I think it's at a respectable level in terms of how all prices have been correcting, you know, based on what I paid for this and what it's worth now. I think I'm okay with that. It's only a couple $100 difference. But I think one of the things that is interesting about this book is due to the fact that, you know, generally speaking, for a Marvel Silver Age blue chip, it does have a lower census in comparison to a lot of the other Silver Age blue chips. And even though this is one that is not necessarily impossible to find, it is one that doesn't sell as often as, say, X-Men #4 does, for instance. So this has been a book that, you know, has been able to kind of hold the value, generally speaking. This one will be one to watch out for when we get to next year and we get to season 2 of Loki. I do feel like it is possible that there were a lot of people who bought in high during season 1 of Loki, which would have been the height of, you know, the market in 2021. And maybe there's going to be a lot of people that are hoping that they can kind of recoup some of those losses when we get to season 2. So this will be one to watch out for to see if a lot of these books hit market at that particular time. But either way, I will definitely keep my eyes on this one for next year. And I was still very happy to pick this one up from friend of the channel, Ryan, over at Automatic Comic Books. He was happy to take my money so that he could go buy all those sweet Golden Age books that he's been picking up, but I am very happy with my Journey into Mystery 85. Definitely a book that is going to stay in the collection for quite some time, even if the prices continue to tank. I really, really do enjoy that book, and I really, really do enjoy the character. Anyways, that's all for this video. Those were me going over my wishlist books of 2021 going into 2022. I was 9 of 10, so a very successful year for me overall. In case you didn't see, I got my wish list of 2022 going into 2023. I put it out a couple days ago. Go check out that video if you feel like seeing what I'm looking for. Let me know what you guys think. What books did you pick up this last calendar year? What books did you get steals on? What books did you way overpay for? Let me know in the comments. Drop me a like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying the content, and I'll see you in the next video.